everybody, and welcome to Musings by Nikki. Today, I'm not very amused, and I'll tell you why. I am sitting here with a covered book, and which is lovely, and we're going to learn how to do that still today, because we will persevere. Oh, yes. However, I went to upload my video and somehow, and I've never done this before, but somehow ended up deleting this entire video. Now, here's the benefit of being married to a techie guy who does technology for a living. He was able to recover all but the first. So I record on a GoPro and it segments my videos into 11-minute segments. And it just chunks it out, and that's how it stores. I just pull those videos, throw them into my editor, and it just smashes them all right back together, and it's fine. No bigs. Somehow, the very first one got corrupted, and he just could not recover it. Not for not trying. Bless that man. He tried, but he just couldn't get it. So, I'm here to recreate what I think I said in the front of the video, and then we will rejoin me 2 days ago when I actually did the work. So, but this is what we're going to end up with. Look, I can show you now. Future me can show you what past me was working on. We'll end up with this. And at the end, you'll see that I make these are liners, and I've actually now glued them down and sewn around them. So this is what they'll look like. And this is our binding paper. So by the end of the video, that's what you'll have. And this is our cover. And we're going to lick it. Isn't that pretty? Let's go figure out how to make it. But what I wanted to tell you first was, I said you have a couple choices with different kinds of fabric. I chose to go with this one, which is an upholstery fabric. I think this is maybe like even an indoor-outdoor one or something, but it's got a little more heft. It's a little thicker. So these work really good. They're pretty durable. And if it's a thick enough fabric, it adds, it just adds some heft to the cover as well. Now, the problem and why I pulled these other ones out was this one is fine. This is an upholstery fabric as well. And it's about that same weight. So that's good. This would be a good one to cover books with, and I've done it before. These two, now these are upholstery fabrics. This one is a little bit thicker because this is woven and this is woven, and it's very thick. These would be really hard to cover a smaller book with, like what we're doing here, a 5x7. Any hardcover, these are going to be a trick, just because you have to be able to, wrap it around these corners and get the corners wrapped in like this. And by the time you do that, you end up with a lot of bulk down in these corners, even if you miter it really good. This is pretty thick to try and be wrapping around a hardcover book. So for your first go at this, I would not recommend something really heavy, like one of these heavier upholstery fabrics. I would say if you're going to do an upholstery fabric, do one of these lighter weight upholstery fabrics. Now, I did bring these out as well to say this is just a regular piece of calico, and this is some coffee stained muslin that I have. And just a couple words about choosing these kinds of fabrics. The muslin, the coffee stained muslin, is great, and I've covered several books with it, but because it has no pattern to it or anything, apart from the little lines from me crunching it while I'm coffee staining it, it will show any little bit of glue through it. So if you don't get your glue layers very thin and even, which you'll see us do as we cover the book, you'll have a very good chance at glue bleeding through this. So that you have to be careful with that. But I'll get to a way to maybe prevent that in a second. You can do it. I just do a very thin, careful layer of glue, and I don't, really smash this fibers down into it. I just smooth it out, and I've had a good time of it. Knowing that it bleeds through, I've actually a couple of times smashed it down and put a little extra glue on purpose so that the glue comes through, because I want to make it look really grungy and The glue actually acts as a kind of a resist, because then I've inked and smashed ink and stuff over the top. So I've done that on purpose. But if you're not going for that really super grungy look, then you have to just be really careful. This is just a really thin layer of calico, or what we would call like quilting fabric. And it has a print, so that hides a little bit of your, you know, even though this is just a very light print, it hides a little bit of the, if you get a little bit of glue coming through, if you get a little bit. Now, if you got a big streak of glue where you know, brushed on and got too big, then you're going to see that. But a little bit of pattern helps, okay? But it is thin, and it has kind of an open weave, so, or a more open weave. The thing you can do to try to prevent that, did I leave my, oh yeah, okay, I've got it over here. You can use a fusible stabilizer, or fusible web, I think it's called, or fusible stabilizer, and it's an iron-on product, and you can cut your piece of fabric and then iron this stuff on the back, and it creates what some people I think call like book fabric or book cloth. And there's different weights of it. You don't want anything too heavy. You want a medium weight of it, because you still want it to be flexible. But then it puts another barrier between the cloth and your glue and the board. And so it just helps it maybe not have the glue come through so easily. And it maybe helps with making it a little bit, it's just another layer to, you know, protect the wear and tear of the book and stuff like that. So you can do that. You can use the stabilizer or the fusible iron-on web. It's called something like that. Anyway, you can use those products as well to make a book cloth. So then I will, let's see, I think the part where we were in the video, so I had cut, the last thing I had done before we get to where we're going to drop back into the video, the part that we couldn't recover. Sorry, I'm needing extra coffee this morning after dealing with trying to recover this stupid video all day yesterday. Luckily, I mean, like I said, I'm so glad that my husband got the part that he did. So what you want to do is, all these two fabrics are really close. Do it this way. Yeah, okay. So you want to cut your fabric down before you start gluing or doing anything. So what you want to do is, you can see here the amount that I've left to fold back over on the edges. So you can see that it's wider here than it is here. So this is definitely not an exact step. But you want to cut your fabric about an inch and a half. I usually give myself an inch and a half around the edges like this. Okay, so I'm not going to cut this because I don't want to cut into this. I'm not covering this book, but I would use my scissors. I'd go to the corner like this, make sure I've got an inch and a half on this side. So I'd probably need to scoot it over a little more here. An inch and a half, inch and a half. Then I'd trim it off here and trim it off here. Okay, so you're just cutting down, because then you don't have some big floppy piece of fabric to work with. Then let's just pretend that that's my cut fabric, okay? And that's the size of the book I'm making. The other thing that you can do, here, we'll just pretend like you don't see that part over there. And it's the real size of my book. So we've got it, our margins cut around. The one thing that you can do is also cut your corners. So you want to miter your corners like this. And you'll see when we come to the next video, when we jump back in, my corners are mitered. Now you want to come probably like 1.5 millimeters or 2, probably 1 millimeter off of the corner of the book, because you want to have some fabric to work around the corner like this. If you cut the fabric right up to the corner, then you'll see that little brown cardboard corner exposed. So you want to have just enough fabric there, right? So if this was mitered, so we'll go like this and pretender. Recreating, guys. I'm going to bring it just inside. Let's see if I can show this. Yeah, like that. That's about what you want it to look like, because then you have this little bit of fabric here to work up and around. Of course, this is like 8 fabrics thick right now, but when it's just 1 fabric thick, this is going to give you just enough to work up around that corner, and you'll see me do that step in the rest of the video. Okay. So I think that's where we are. I don't want to chat too much more because otherwise this video is going to be excessively long, because now I've had to explain why I'm wearing 2 different things, or why I have the beginning part is different than the end part. But let's go create this and these. So in the next video, we will be ready to bind our book into this. I'm getting excited because this is getting really good. Well, actually, we won't. I don't know if we'll bind our book into this next video. We'll make the soft cover. Then we'll bind our books. So anyway, guys, let's go join me. It's going to seem like an abrupt transition, but we'll just go join me. Oh, you need I think we need our glue plate and brush and some glue, because that's where we're going to join me doing this. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya in my next video or whatever. Showed you in the last video. I had a little bit left here, so I'm going to just add a tad bit more to my little plate. I'm using my same totally scrubby brush, only it's got a little less green in it now because I gave it a real good scrub after I did these. And I don't think it matters which side we're going to do. So here's what I do. Again, because if I just went and spread glue, started here, and worked my way across the whole thing, a couple things are going to happen. This side's going to start drying before I get this side done. And you want to take your time and make sure you get a nice thin layer of glue, but even layer. And you don't want any of it to dry before, because then you'll have bubbles where your fabric's not stuck down. Okay, so you want to get really good adhesion. And the other thing is if you did that, you can start laying your fabric down, you know, and then you're not able to like work out all the bubbles because it's all stuck to the stuff already. So what I do is I just do the spine first, then we'll stick the fabric to that. So in the interest of moving the video along, I will start painting my glue on to the spine. I'm not going to worry about the edges quite yet. I'm just going to do the spine. And I will go down in the little creases that we made here though. So what I want to do is make a good even layer, not too thick, and try to make it, like I said, as consistent and even as possible. And because my PVA is, like I was saying in my last video, I think I've had it for like 2 years. So because it's a little bit thicker, it dries a little faster. It's thickening up on me a little. Okay. So there we go. I feel pretty good about that even layer. So now I'm going to lay my make sure that I've still got room in all my corners here, right? And press that down. I'm going to use my... So this right now, if we were using that thinner cloth and we hadn't made bookboard out of it, we hadn't given it any sort of reinforcement or anything, this is where we would, when we're burnishing it down like this is where we would start to see little seepage happening. And it's unsightly if you don't want it there, and it's real frustrating. Again, I speak from experience. I've done it myself. I am now using this end of my, this is a Teflon bone folder, but I mean, whatever you have. If your point of yours is too thick, if your bone folder is too thick, you can find something else to just kind of work the cloth down into this crease a little bit. Let me find the crease on this side. This is not entirely necessary. I just like to see, you know, if I can get the cloth to work down into that crease, because I think it gives it a little bit nicer finish. It just kind of looks like what a normal book would, you know. Sometimes I'll even take it, you really can't see this, but over the edge of my desk right here and really work this fabric down into the crease, but I'll just do it up here now because you guys can't see what I'm doing over there. Okay, so I feel like I've got a real good, I feel like I've got this really good and pushed down. Also, the heavier the pattern like this, so when you make a mistake like I did with the taping and ended up with the overlap, the smooth side, this side where it's not overlapped, ideally both of them would be that way, like towards the outside. But with this heavily patterned fabric, it covers up a multitude of sins. All right, so I feel like we've got that really good and adhered. So now I'm going to do one side at a time. But again, I'm not gonna do the whole side all at once. I'm just gonna start here. So I'm gonna go right up next to where my, fabric is adhered. And then I'm gonna go maybe halfway because, again, I don't want to start rushing and get it wrong. I don't want to start getting too gloopy with my glue. I don't want the glue to dry too fast and then not get a good adhesion. Because again, the cover of your book is, especially if you're wanting to sell books and stuff, right? The cover of your book is where people look first. It's you know how they say you can't judge a book by its cover, but honestly, we mostly do a lot of times, don't we? If that's the first thing we see, how many flip throughs have you been looking at? And they start their video and they pull the book out and you look at the cover and go, oh, that's yummy, right? That must be a great book. Okay, so I've got a good piece, a good amount. I feel good about that even layer. So now I'm going to smooth, and I'm smoothing from this side out as much as I can. And that just works out those, any wrinkles. I mean, I can't even see the wrinkles now, so. Although it would have been smart to just start with not wrinkled fabric. Okay, so now I'm gonna pull this back, and I'm gonna pull back just till I can feel that it's adhered. And then make sure that I get right up under there, right up under here. But be careful when you're doing this part that you're doing it with a fairly dry brush, because you don't want to be shoving a glob of glue underneath there, right? So I'm just doing it, and you don't want to be painting on the fabric because then you're just asking for it to leak through. So sorry if I'm going super fast or too slow. This is my pace. Like I said, I want to make sure that my PVA is still good and tacky when I spread my cloth across it. Okay, nice even layer. And push down. Okay. Now you're going to notice at some point here, if you're using bookboard like I am, that it's going to want to start curling up again. And that's because the glue is getting into the cardboard and it swells those fibers. So you want to let this dry under something heavy. Another thing, and it's funny, again, I've had this thought in my head for a long time. Let me know if any of you have tried this. I've thought, I wonder if you painted your book cover with like acrylic paint and then let it dry. But the thing I always come back to is, won't that just be more wet on there and swell the fibers too? So, Okay, so this side's adhered and this middle spine is adhered. Now we're going to go do the same thing over here. I'm going to pull that back and do the first half of our cover on this side. I hope you guys are all having a good day. I have been truly, truly enjoying going through this process with you guys and reading your comments and responding to them. It's kind of like my evening fun now, is that I get to read through your comments and stuff. I feel like we're kind of in our little club and we're doing this thing together. Even if you're not doing it with me, even if you're just, having a cup of tea and some biscuits and watching. CT and biscuits. I'm being all international and stuff. Okay. So I'm going to do this. So this is, I mean, if you were using Fabri-Tac here, that would be fine, but you would still want to squirt it on and then brush it out into a thin layer. You know, you definitely wouldn't want to just go at this, you know, the same way that we do, like if we were going to attach a piece of paper to something, we just kind of squirt the glue on. But this, you definitely don't want to have big blobs, big blobules of Fabri-Tac laying on your page, because that'll definitely bleed through. It's harder for Fabri-Tac to bleed through, but it still will if you're going to smush it down on there. So, okay. Just working this last bit out. Nice even layer. And last smoothing. Where are all these red little fibers coming from? This must have been on top of some other fabric on top of it. Okay, so it's gonna be really hard for you to see on camera right now, but I feel like I've got a really nice adhesion here. It's nice and flat. The book board wants to warp a little bit right now, but like I said, once this is all done, I'm gonna put it underneath my big heavy dictionary again. So I've got nice adhesion all the way up to the edges of my book. That's what you want. All the way up to the edges, I feel like it's stuck down really good. And that's what you want, because you don't want there to be bubbles, because you will notice that stuff, you know, especially if you're not using something so heavily patterned. Now I'm going to make sure all this is fairly dry, all the glue that I got everywhere. Fairly dry. And now we're going to start folding up the edges. I like to do my bottom and my top edge first and then come back and do these, because that's where I need to fold around a little bit, and I feel like it's easier to manage the smaller, shorter one when I've got to manage two corners rather than trying to mess with the whole long one. So for this, I'm going to spread my glue along the, I'm going to get down into those crevices. And then here, I'm going to try to go as close to the, you know, to get the bottom, again, without shoving a bunch of glue onto the fabric itself. It's a little harder to do, and I will almost always have little bits of glue kind of bleed through the edges. But, and again, this is my whacked out Nikki logic. I don't know that this is actually anything scientific or true, but sometimes I think that the little bit of PVA that might squish around on the corners and the edges like here kind of helps protect the edges of the book, because it, you know, that glue gets on there. It almost acts like a Mod Podge or something to kind of seal in and help protect where the book gets the most abuse. I don't know. That's my own little thought. So now I'm going to kind of just push up, and what I want to do is I want to get it, you know, as tight along the bottom as I can. So I'm pushing up, and I really want to make sure that I get this a nice clean edge down here. And I wonder if I can show you. There's no way that I can really show you this on camera. No. Well, can you kind of see there's little bits of glue globules that wants to come through the weave of the fabric. So again, I'm just gonna try and smooth, and this time I'm always going in towards the middle so I can try to bring this edge as nice and neat as possible. Okay, look at that. We've got our first finished edge. Doesn't that look nice? Okay, now we're gonna do the same on this long edge. Some glues also, I should mention this, it's worth mentioning, seem to have a little bit harder time adhering to the book tape, the book repair tape. Now, this PVA doesn't have any problem adhering to it. I've always had good luck with this. But I think I've done like Fabri-Tac before maybe, and it had a harder time adhering to the tape part. So that's just something to keep in mind. Maybe do a test swatch. Okay, so see, I went way too high here, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. That'll all get covered. Okay, I'm just trying to like pull it up and around. So I get a nice clean edge. And yep, I'm getting a little glue blobules. Okay. So there we go. We've got two nice clean sides. Looking good so far, huh? Now comes the fun part. And by fun, I mean difficult. Well, not difficult, just finicky. So on the edges, you see how we've come, and we've got just a little bit of leftover here that we can pull up and around. This one I've got a little bit more playroom. This one I don't have as much playroom. So I'm gonna just, I gotta put some more glue out. I try to only put it a little bit, you know, anticipating that I'd rather put more and not just waste. Okay. All right, so I'm going to put, oh goodness, my glue along here, and then it's got to go on top of this fabric a little bit here. And this is where I'm going to have gluey fingers. It is inevitable and unavoidable. I'm putting a whole bunch of glue just down all in that business because I'm going to kind of just like paper mache it. I'm going to shape it and form it and bend it to my will. So here's what I do. And I kind of got to move a little bit quick, but we'll do it 4 times. So I'm rolling up into this corner as much as I can. And then I pull this up and fold it over, and I just keep pushing it over. Now I've got to work the rest of this up too here quick. So then the second one, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just pushing all the little fibers to try and get them. And I'm not going straight in. I'm trying to go towards this side a little more. So then when I pull this up, I end up with a little bit neater corner. Now you can keep working it a little bit here. My PVA dries really fast, which is in this case beneficial. And I kind of just keep working this corner until it's either too dry to work it or till I'm satisfied. Sometimes, again, depending on what type of, there you go, I'm just gonna work it a little more. Sometimes depending on what type of fabric I'm using and what I'm planning to do to the inside, I will fold this over, which I'll show you on the other side so it makes a little more sense. Because right now I've got a raw edge going here, a raw cut edge, but we're gonna fill this up with paper. You know, our liner paper will come up past most of it, and we might even put a layer of muslin underneath that, and that would hide it completely. Okay, so I have worked that little corner, and so now I have a nice, neat corner. Same thing here. You can hardly tell because again, I was pushing up this way and down with my finger until it just kind of formed a nice, neat little corner. Okay. What I was saying is you can fold this little part over like this. Let me show you up closer. So rather than if I go like this, then I've got this raw edge going on to this raw edge. Because it's so heavily patterned, you can't even really tell. But you can fold this over. So if I were using just plain white muslin, I'd probably fold this over and then go like this because you'd end up with a neater line. It's also easier to do that if you have thinner cloth. This is a thicker cloth, so by the time I fold this over and fold it up, it starts getting pretty bulky here. So it's kind of, you know, it depends on what you're using. Again, I'm going to give this a liberal dose of glue down in this corner, because that's going to be kind of like my, you know, paper mache glue is kind of what it feels like. It's going to be what I use to bend and form it to my will. Now, honestly, don't worry if you seriously screw up your book edges, your corners, and you're really not happy with how they turned out. Again, I'm pushing and molding so I get all my little frayed little bits and pieces, right, and anything, and then I'm kind of stretching and pulling as I pull this up. If you really screw it up and you're really unhappy with it, you just go buy some Tim Holtz book corners and put those suckers on. It'll just cover up all your messed up corner that you don't like. I'm not going to lie, I've done that. Hated the way a book corner turned out, but loved the book fabric and the cloth and stuff. So I've just put on book corners. I mean, most of the time it's intentional, but a time or two it's been to protect corners that I didn't like. Okay. That one's good. This is good here. Let me clear off any little glue seepage. Then I do notice this wants to pull up just a little bit because I didn't get glue over quite far enough. So I'm just going to put a little extra under that edge. My fingers are right gluey right now, but that's okay. Okay, I hope desperately that this is making sense, that I'm just kind of working all the little fibers and stuff to go into that corner. So again, we've got a nice corner that you can hardly see the corner on because I just got a liberal amount of glue in there and just kept pushing and working that fabric in. All right. So there we go. Now, with putting glue on the other side, it's kind of unwarped where the parts are that I want to warped. So this corner is the only one that's really wanting to pop up right now. But I will still dry this under a heavy book. But there you go, guys. We've got a fabric covered journal. And so if we were doing the one that has the Tyvek on one side, this fabric on the outside would be covering these joints and providing that extra strength for those as well, right? I'm not going to cover this one because we only need one hardcover. Now, what I am going to do is go ahead while it's wet and give it some really good creases in here. And just kind of, it's way easier to stretch this material a little bit while the glue is wet on it, or even just a little bit tacky, than when it's dry. Otherwise, sometimes I'll let something dry flat like this, and then I'll pick it up and go, and it's going crackle, crackle, and okay, so I'm gonna put some stank on it and really just give a good crease into those joints and ease that fabric a little bit if I can. Okay, so there we go, guys. We've got a nice, tidy fabric covered hardcover. And this is what's fun for me. The glue is all dry. So look at that. Isn't that fun? This is where it really starts taking shape. Except for that's ugly. So we got to deal with that. So the next step will be to create, we're going to do a hidden binding. Okay. So that means, sorry, I've got glue all over my fingers. So that means we're not going to, you have a couple options. You could just cover, so this is probably what I'm going to use as my liner. You could just cover the entire, cut pieces and cover the entire insides here. And then put it in and sew right through this and right through the spine, right? And that is awesome. You can do all kinds of fun stuff, put buttons and beads and things on there. You can, cross them over and things, all these things I've done. and they're fun to do. Or in this case, I don't want to see the stitching because we might do something fun, you know, on the spine. If you want to do any sort of spine decoration or label or something, then you don't want stitching coming through. So that's what we're going to do with this one. Okay, so I want to get this really quick under my big book to dry, which I've moved over to my cutting table over there. So I'm going to go put it under there, and then we'll come back and address. Well, actually I can't right now. Oh yeah, I can. Duh. I'm going to put it, hold on guys, I'm putting it over here under the giant dictionary. Okay. So now our covers were 5.5 by 7.5. Okay. So we need 2 pieces of this to cover those. We don't want to go full 5.5 because that would come all the way to the edge of the book and you're going to end up with, you know, paper right up to the edge. We want to come just to the inside edge of the cover. So here, I suppose I could show you with this. Pretend this is the fabric covered one. We want to come with our liner paper within, you know, close, but not all the way. Actually, I could just do this with the white side so you can see better. So like this, right? Where we have just a little edge, because then the fabric will show through around and we'll see our nice tidy little edges, but then we'll have the fabric, or I mean the paper liner coming right up to it. Then we're going to make the piece for the middle. So with the hidden spine, the first thing we do is there will be one separate piece that'll look kind of like this Tyvek piece, and it will be lined with Tyvek. And that's what we'll sew our signatures to. We'll do some measuring here, and that's what we'll sew our signatures through. Then we'll glue that whole thing down to the inside of the book, okay? And that's how the signatures are sewn through that, but not through the spine. We'll glue that all down, and then we'll put our liner papers over the edges. So you will see the paper where they're sewn through, but our liner paper will come right up to the edge. You can use the same paper for all 3 pieces if you want, or what I like to do sometimes is put a separate piece of paper as my binding piece, and separate ones on the edges. So I think that's what we'll do here. And I had picked this one out, but I didn't pick out a second sheet. So I'm going to pause for a second and go find, this is just a thicker piece of, it's not quite cardstock, but it's from a 12 by 12 scrap paper pack. So I'm going to go find one more that kind of complements this and stuff, and I will be right back. Okay, JKZ guys, out with the old, in with the new. I went back to, this is the paper pack. It's the Paper Studio I showed you in the last video. This is from Hobby Lobby. Don't pay full price. Use your 40% off coupon, or wait until all of the products go 50% off. You know, every other week I think the Paper Studio is on 50% off. So wait till it goes there. Then it's a really good deal. And it's got, this paper pad is gorgeous. So I went to the paper pad and found this, which I think, and it's 2 sheets of the same. So that whole, but look at, I really like the way that this looks with this book. So that whole thing about using 2 separate pieces, yeah, ignore that. We're not doing that. I changed my mind. It's my prerogative. So we're going to need 2 sheets though, because actually maybe, no, we will, because we need, so like I said, okay, we need to cut our piece that we're going to bind with, or bind through, and then we need to cut our 2 end papers. The piece we're going to bind through needs to look roughly like the shape of this white Tyvek right here. Okay, we want it to come pretty much all the way to the bottom and pretty much all the way to the top, leaving just a millimeter maybe, so that it's not coming right to the edge. And then it can go any length over here, but again, the bigger the better, because the more adhesion space it gives it. And I just think the more strength, the more fighting chance you give it to last. So I'm going to cut mine the full width of this 12 by 12. Okay. But I know I need it 7.5 inches tall is how tall our book is. But I don't need it to go all the way. So I'm going to cut it 7.25. Okay. And this is to make our binding sheet. Let me pull out the small guy. Okay. So I'm going to go 7.25. Like so. It's hard, right? Of course, the 7.25 thing is right on the mark there, right on the joint. Okay, so I'm going to cut it. So now let me make sure here. Yep, 7.25. So this is going to be our piece. See how we've just got a little bit on top and a little bit on bottom. Oh, there you go. So this is going to be our bind through piece, and we'll mess with that in a second. Then we need just our liner papers. Okay. So again, this is 5.5 by 7.5 is what this is. So we want to cut it 1/4 inch short on either side. So a 1/2 inch total. So instead of going 5.5, we'll go 5 inches by 7 inches. That leaves us 1/4 inch on every side. Okay. But that said, and this is where, so this is where math, right? Or not math necessarily. I don't know that I want a full 1/4 inch. So what I'm going to do is cut it. I'm going to line up to 5.5 or 5 by 7, right? Like I said, but I'm going to go, so here's 5. I'm going to go maybe 1/8 of an inch more. Okay. And then I need another one of those. 5 and 1/8. It's better to err on the side of too big right now, because you can always cut more off, but you can't add more back on. So again, I'm going to go 7, and then I'm going to come up to 1/8. So 7 and 1/8. And set your scraps on one side and your cut pieces that you're saving on the other side. Otherwise, I've gotten them all messed up before, and then I'm going, is this my piece? You know? Yeah, don't be like me. Be smarter. Okay, 7 and 1/8. So these should be our liner pieces. These are our scraps. That's our pieces that we want over here. Okay, so now if we did everything right, this will be our sewing in. That will get glued down first. And then these will go over the edges like so. There you go. So you can kind of just see where the patterns meet there, and that's where our crease is going to be, right? But I also think that before we glue these down, one of the things I like to do is sew a layer of muslin behind it, because it just gives this lovely edge. But we'll get to that a little bit later. First, what we're going to do is work on this. So we want to make the binding piece. I'm going to put my fabric scissors away so that I don't pick them up and use them inadvertently for paper. Like we mitered the corners here, we want to do the same on this. It doesn't really matter how you do it. Just whack some corners off. Okay. That just gives us some ease. And now we want another piece of Tyvek because we're going to be, if we sewed just through this paper, I like to pull and make sure that our signatures are tight. We're going to make sure our signatures are tight and not wobbly, okay? So in order to do that, we need something better than just paper, because no matter how thick your paper is, you're going to rip through it when you pull your stitches tight. So we're going to take more Tyvek, because I showed you in my last video, you can't rip this stuff. And so when we sew through these two layers together, now we're cooking with oil. So we're gonna just glue this down and then we'll trim around it. So I'm using my same PVA glue here, and I'm going to give myself a good layer. Oh no, I should have put a little more on. Yep. Now I've got to work super quick because my PVA is going to dry there. Okay. Oh well, I can always go over the part that's dried. This one, again, you just want a nice even layer. It doesn't have to be as pretty or as precise, but you do want it to come all the way to the edges of your paper. You can also do this with fabric. I find it's a little bit more difficult. I've done it and I like the look of that, but I find it's a little bit more difficult when it comes to the sewing the signatures in, because the fabric is more flexible and it's kind of, you're really having to work with it a lot. Okay. Okay, make sure everything is good and covered, which I think it is. And we're just gonna slap this guy. Whoops. Come on. I'm trying to go to the edge so at least it's one less edge I had to cut, but that, you know, the best laid plans. Okay, there. What is that? Oh, it's a little chunk. We don't want chunks. Oh, my board is getting all gluey. You see that? You see how I did that and it didn't even wrinkle the paper? It's because this Tyvek is an awesome thing. It totally turns your paper into a whole different beast. So I'm going to make sure we've got real good adhesion. This reminds me of like a pretty old like Victorian wallpaper or something. Okay, now I'm just going to cut off the trim around the edges here. This part you want to do really carefully because you will see this edge, at least a little bit of it, right in the middle-ish. The middle-ish. I'm using my good language skills today. All right, so we're going to get rid of those. And there we go. We've got our book binding paper thing. I don't have a particularly technical term for this. So we've got just a little bit of space at the top and a little space at the bottom, which is just what we want when we put this thing in. And we're going to create what's called a headband to cover any little bit. But remember, this doesn't have the fabric, right? So on our other book, on our real book cover, there's fabric coming, so you're not going to see any of that anyway. But we'll create what's called a headband here, a little bit of lace or something. It just adds little extra touches. So this, I can tell, is still a little wet, so I'm just gonna, we gotta let this aside to dry. Okay, I'm gonna put that over there to dry. now let me move these over here. And these are our two end papers. So we don't want to lose track of these. These are our end papers to go into the, once we've put the other thing. Now I think what we're going to do with these in order to get these ready is I would like to sew, or not sew. Well, I probably will sew, but I would like to put a little bit of muslin around the edges of this. You can do this one of two ways. Now I'm going to grab it, hold on. I've got scads of muslin, coffee stained muslin. I mean, I've got it, lots of it. It was on super sale at one point. I just bought a whole ton of it, and now I coffee stained like yardage, and so I've got lots of it. This is just one small piece. So this is some super coffee stained grungy, but look at it, matches so well with this. Perfecto. And the reason I'm going to do this, now again, this is a totally optional step for you guys, but that's a bad edge. But look here. You get just this little bit peeking out here, and I like the padded feel that it gives behind the paper. Again, I'm about texture and I love that. We got to get rid of this bad edge here. So we're gonna rip it because, you know, the ripped look is part of what's going to give it that nice aesthetic appeal. Oh my gosh, now there we go. But don't throw this away because there's all kinds of good uses for that. I've got a little bin that I keep them in over there. So now I'm going to, now we know this is a true line here, but this bottom seems to be a little wonky. So what I'm going to worry about first is getting my fabric as wide as I want it. Because this is a little stretchy, I have to, or crunched up, I have to stretch it a little. And I just want just a hint of it on the edge. And then again, on the other side, I should be doing this a little lower though. Just a hint. Already I love this kind of squishy feel it gives it. And then I'm going to give it just a little bit here. Strings, strings, strings. Okay. Did I go just wide enough? Yeah, once I glue it down, then I'll sew around the edges. So I want to make sure, is my bottom straight here across the bottom? I think so, actually. This side is maybe the wonky side. So I'm going to, hopefully this will give me well, nope, it looks like this one piece might be too short, just a tad. I'm going to rip off all these strings again. Okay, try and finger press this out a little bit. Okay, so there's our first piece, and once I glue it down, that'll all. All right, I'm going to fast forward through me ripping another piece for the next other one. Okay, guys, so there we have two pieces that just have just a hint of it around the edges, and I think that'll make a nice finish. The last thing I'm going to do with you guys today, because I'm getting close to an hour, is we'll just finish prepping these. I'm going to ink around the edges, but I'm also going to round with my small rounder the oh, come on, there we go. The two that are going to be on the outside. These two don't matter because they'll go right up against the binding part, so I kind of want them straight, but the outside ones I want just, again, it's just a nice finish. And then I'm going to give the edge of this a little bit of inking. And, oh, and this side too, duh. That just makes that cloth stand out even better behind it. That's me just trying to push the little thing to stay, the foam pad to stay on there. Jamie, my friend Jamie, sent me a listing for some other ones that she thought might possibly stay on there better. I am also going to, at this point, give just the top and the bottom of our binding thing some ink. You're not going to see these sides at all. You'll only see the top and the bottom. So you only need to ink here. Ugh. Okay. So tomorrow in our next video, I'm gonna off camera, I'm just gonna let you know, I'm gonna put a little bit of glue on the back of these and glue these on. Since they're wrinkly, I might throw them through the iron, under the iron for a second, or if I put glue on, I'm just gonna have to smash them down. And then I am literally just gonna run a stitch around the edge just to give it a nice finish. Okay, so then when these glue down in the book, it looks like it's been stitched. Well, it won't look like it's been stitched, it will have been stitched. Then tomorrow comes the part where we have to math. And so I'm gonna have to have my morning coffee and my Wheaties and come up with some sort of good, concise way to teach this to you guys, because I usually just kind of fumble through it. You'd think, again, as many times as I've done this, I'd have some good system down, and I kind of do, but each book is just a little different for me. So we have to math tomorrow though, guys. So before you show up tomorrow, eat your Wheaties, drink your coffee or your tea, you know, go for a brisk walk, get your brains going, and we have to do math. Us creatives necessarily aren't always the best at mathing. So, okay, thanks guys. I would show you the cover again just to remind you, but it's over there under the heavy dictionary, so I don't want to take it out. I want it to dry nice and flat. This part you don't have to worry about. Usually it doesn't want to curl up. If it does seem like it wants to curl up a little bit, you can throw it on top of the book cover and let it all dry flat, but this one doesn't want to. Tomorrow we're going to bend it and manipulate it anyway. So thanks guys. I really hope this is making sense. If it's not, please, 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 I gave you all the avenues to contact me. If you have questions, don't sit at home and be frustrated with me because you can't understand what I'm saying or something because I'm explaining some wonky, weird way. Please, please, please feel free to reach out to me or put a comment below, and I will look at glue fingers. I'll try my best to either answer it in an upcoming or like a little bonus thing like I did today, which is not today. That's a couple days ago by the time you're seeing this. Anyway, guys, I hope that you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, middle of the night, whatever time it is, on whatever side of this glorious planet of ours that we live on. And until I see you next time, in the next day or two here, stay safe and healthy, stay unfrustrated, but have fun making one of these. And be blessed, guys. God bless. Take care. Bye-bye.